Hi everybody, I'm Ryan, and today we're going to talk about the new hotness in Standard. I guess it's not new by the time this video gets posted, but it is Esper Self Bounce. We're going to talk about cards in the deck, the overall strategy of the deck, and how to play the deck. Let's jump into it. This is the Esper Self Bounce deck, and what this deck is attempting to do is utilize permanents that do something beneficial when they enter the battlefield, and then sit there, and then use other cards to return those permanents to our hand so that we can replay them. And you do this enough times, and you can reuse cards over and over, eventually wildly outcard our opponent, and win the game. This deck is divided up into a few categories, so let me split those up right now. So these are the categories I would kind of define in the deck. We have cards that return stuff to our hand. We have cards that do stuff when they enter the battlefield and we want returned to our hand. And then two miscellaneous categories. We're playing some Go for the Throat just as removal, and then Mockingbird to copy any of the creatures in either of these categories. So let's go through the permanents that we want to keep returning first. We have Defiled Crypt and Cadaver Lab. Cadaver Lab we're going to play in most of the time. When you unlock this door, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Being able to do this over and over because we keep returning Cadaver Lab to our hand is great because it means when they deal with the creatures, they are not dealt with forever. Nowhere to Run is a flash enchantment. When it enters, target creature gets -3/-3 till end of turn, and creatures our opponent control can be the target's spells or abilities, although they didn't have hexproof, and ward abilities of those creatures don't trigger. That line of text isn't hyper relevant, though it is a little relevant sometimes, but mostly -3/-3 kills most creatures. Hopeless Nightmare, when it enters, each opponent discards a card and loses 2 life, which recurring that over and over is pretty solid. And when it's put in the graveyard from the battlefield, scry 2. And we can just pay 3 mana to sacrifice Hopeless Nightmare. We aren't going to do that very often because we'd rather return it to our hand and just keep replaying it to deal 2 damage and have our opponents discard cards and just keep them empty-handed. Playing a Storm Chaser's Talent, which I think is the most powerful card in the deck. It's a class where the first level of the class lets you create a 1/1 blue and red otter creature token with prowess, which is excellent. So a lot of what this is going to do, we're going to keep returning Storm Chaser's Talent, keep creating 1/1s with prowess, and because most of the cards in our deck cost so little, these 1/1s are very often 3/3s or 4/4s when we actually attack with them. However, we can level it up for 4 mana and have it become level 2, return target instant sorcery card from a graveyard to our hand. Pretty good. And it's level 3 for 6 mana is whenever you cast an instant sorcery spell, create a 1/1 blue and red otter creature token with prowess. Again, most of the time, we're just going to keep it on level 1, sometimes level 2, and extremely rarely level 3. Playing Optimistic Scavenger is a 1 mana 1/1 with Eerie whenever enchantment you control enters. And whenever you fully unlock a room, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So we're not going to be bouncing this super often, but we have so many enchantments in our deck that we're going to be returning to our hand and then replaying. This lets our creatures just get ridiculously large. And we're playing a single Sheltered by Ghosts. Returning this is fine if it hits a token. However, Sheltered by Ghosts, very, very good against the red deck, which is important to have some play against the red deck because we run a lot of pain lands in the Esper version, and it's like quite decent removal. Now, we're going to be returning these cards with these cards. So Kaido allows us to ninjutsu, where when a creature is not blocked, we can turn that creature to our hand and have Kaido entered attacking, and it's a 3/4 ninja and with hexproof. And then it's also a planeswalker where you get to do all these things. However, returning these creatures like Fear of Isolation, Nurturing Pixie, and Optimistic Scavenger, sometimes Mockingbird certainly, allows us to reuse those effects and then also just have a planeswalker for only 3 mana, which is excellent. This Town Ain't Big Enough is a 5 mana spell that says return up to 2 target non-land permanents to their owner's hands. However, it becomes 2 mana if it targets a permanent you control. Sometimes you want to target 2 permanents you control, but very often you're going to return like a threat your opponent has on the battlefield, return 1 of these things to your hand and then replay it, or return 2 of these things to your hand and replay it. Playing Fear of Isolation. As initial cost to cast a spell, return a permanent you control his owner's hand. You see how that interacts. And it's a 2/3 with flying. And Nurturing Pixie is a 1 mana 1/1 with flying. When Nurturing Pixie enters, return up to 1 target non-fairy, non-land permanent you control to its owner's hand. If a permanent was returned this way, put a +1/+1 counter on Nurturing Pixie. So it gets bigger, it becomes effectively a 1 mana 2/2, and we return these things and replay them again, and things just get absolutely insane. And remember, like This Town Ain't Big Enough, Fear of Isolation, you know, all that stuff, they can return each other as well, so you can continue to benefit off of these bounce effects. And you see how this deck just kind of combos with itself, is able to recur most of its cards and reuse its cards over and over and just completely outcard and outvalue the opponent just by returning these enchantments over and over. Now, as far as the sideboard goes, Destroy Evil, very good against enchantments and things with toughness 4 or greater. I'm thinking like Shieldred or like Leyline Binding decks. Rest in Peace, important graveyard hate. Sheltered by Ghosts, mostly for the red deck. It giving lifelink is a really, really big deal. Negate. Pest control decks can be kind of annoying. Really, it's kind of obvious when Negate comes in. Cut down again for the aggressive decks, because aggressive decks can be rough, because again, we're running a lot of pain lands, and they don't really care about the value we're getting. Witch's Vitality is a pretty decent recurring removal spell for decks that play creatures with mana value 2 or less, like aggressive decks. And then Normalize just as some more counter magic against decks with very high impact cards. But there you have Esper Self Bounce in Standard, one of the best decks in Standard at the moment. And if you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check me out on social medias. Links are above me and in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.